Welcome to The Application, the go-to how-to podcast for higher education marketers. I'm your host, Allison Turcio, Assistant Vice President of Enrollment and Marketing at Siena College. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is packed with practical tips and actionable advice to help you elevate your marketing game. In each snackable episode, we bring in experts to share their insights and experience on the topics that matter most to you. Got a question or idea you'd like us to cover? Email team@enrollify.org or reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. The Application is part of the Enrollify podcast network. And if you like this show, you'll definitely want to check out our other higher ed focused podcasts on admissions, tech, marketing, and more. They're packed with stories, ideas, and tools to help you be the best in your field. All right, it's time for the show. We have an exciting episode featuring Mickey Baines, a seasoned consultant and former practitioner with over 25 years of experience in enrollment and student success systems. Mickey led a successful adult education program in Pennsylvania, achieving record results in enrollment, revenue, and retention. We love all of those R's. Now, as a consultant at Kennedy & Company, he oversees the technology services practice, serving over 225 colleges and universities. Mickey's unique insights come from his extensive study of Amazon's customer experience strategies, offering a fresh perspective on higher education. On a personal note, Mickey is an RV enthusiast, currently touring colleges with his son as part of their college search. Today, we'll discuss strategies to engage prospective students, new data collection points, the messy middle of the enrollment funnel, and lessons from Amazon that can enhance the student enrollment process in higher education. Welcome, Mickey.
That was really extensive. You've been trolling on my posts, I think, to pull every bit of information about me you could. Thank you.
I'd like to research our guests, but I'm dying to know, because I've been following your posts on the college tour. How are the college tours going?
So we're almost finished for the summer session. We are going to do another round of visits in late summer, early fall. We have 5 schools left to go and visit. We're going to do a Western Pennsylvania run because we live in Pennsylvania. We're about an hour and a half west of Philadelphia. So we've got a Western Pennsylvania run for a couple of schools, and then we're going to do a DC run for 3 schools. So 5 to go. We are, 12, 13 into it at this point. So we're visiting more than most. But it's been a really fun and interesting experience to really see how my son's interests peak and how they shift as he's really seen more campuses.
What has stood out to you and to your son? What has piqued his interest on these tours?
So his major is not necessarily set. We've got an area of focus, and the majors kind of are vary by institution on how they support that interest. So it's something to do with film and digital media and potentially some form of design. What has surprised me most in his search, knowing him and seeing how he's grown over the past 4 or 5 years, is I really thought we're going to look at this mix of schools and we're going to come back to like 3 or 4 small institutions, somewhere between 1,600 and 3,000 students. That's not the case at all. He's actually wants the other end of it. The larger the school, the more he seems to have an interest in it. I'm shocked
I don't
by
think he's alone.
Yeah, I know. Well, and
that's a lot of teenagers.
Yeah, well, my alma mater is the same way. I applied to 2 schools. I visited 0, but I had a school I wanted to go to. 25,000 students at the time, much larger now. Didn't even the size of a small school versus large never even crossed my mind as like something to think about or be interested. I mean, this is where I wanted to go.
Okay.
And so I was just surprised because he's a little more introverted than me. A little more now. 2 years ago, way more. So he's come out of his shell a little bit, and so I think that has part of it as his personality begins to or continues to evolve. I think that interest. He goes to a high school that's 1,500 students, something like that. It's a really large high school.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
And so, he definitely wants to be in a community that he feels to be much larger than where he is now. And I just didn't really expect that. So that's probably been the biggest shock. What really intrigues him, aside from size, is when the institutions where we've got more of a behind the scenes or inside or detailed look into the equipment that they have to support some type of film or digital experience. So do they have a camera or two? Well, the larger schools have a library or first year students really get this set of cameras, and here are the 15 that we have to check out. And upper class students get this set of equipment because they're trained to use it. It's more expensive. We know that they can be trusted with it. And there's another 20 or so cameras of that to check out. To me, I was a theater undergrad, so we didn't really have a true film studies program, but there were two cameras. There were two for a really large institution. So to see that type of equipment, and it's not just the cameras, it's all the equipment to really go out and create your own hands-on experience. That really stood out to him. And at first I was nervous by that. I thought that's awful materialistic. But when you think about film, there's things you want to learn in college, but there's also experiences you have to have, hands-on experience.
Absolutely.
And not having the equipment really limits your ability to do that in a way that you will as a professional once you get out of a college university setting. So I get it. But those are things I just wasn't prepared for thinking about or looking at that are really attracted him.
Did you visit any schools where they didn't get so specific into the program? They weren't showing you technology or spaces dedicated to the program?
Yeah, there are a lot that were like that. So I would say there's probably been 3 or 4 at this point where we got to see it. 2 of them really got in the depth to show it to us specifically and how they set up. So for example, one university has, you can take your campus tour, but then there's also an academic tour you sign up for, right?
Oh, okay. And that's where they get deeper.
Correct. And that's where they get it. And that's happened a couple of times. A third time we went and just asked while we were on campus because we wanted to see it if we could. And they said, absolutely will. And they took us a tour of the building. And so seeing the spaces, the studio type spaces, seeing here's a set. So one campus has this is a hotel room type of set that we have. Here's our diner that we already have set up so you can do filming in that for basic stuff. So that's kind of cool. And then seeing everything else, you really get a chance to see just the classrooms. And I will say one of the things that stands out for my son is, we'll finish and it's this one seems to be have a bit more of a production focus to their program. This one's a little bit more of a post-production focus. So it's more on editing or more and he's picking up on those things that I pick up on now, but only because he was first. So that, is also a surprise for me that he's seeing that level of detail and noticing those things. That perspective, I feel he thinks things through well already, but I'm much more confident that he's going to pick, something that will fit him with his interest going in. Now, if his interests change, I don't know, but going in with that interest, if that stays where it is, then I feel pretty good that it'll be there and have the right fit for him. So yeah, that's where we are now.
Yeah. And it makes sense if you think about it, because what it is it's not really about the item, right? Or the place. What it is he's visualizing himself.
Correct.
And what his experience would be like. That's really what it is for him. So whatever it is, I think that's great advice for colleges as a whole on a visit, on a tour. What can you do to the tour experience to make sure that the student can picture themselves and visualize themselves doing the work that they're going to be doing when they're on campus? Yeah. I
think there's probably an opportunity, and this would be a bit of a larger lift, but when you're looking at the students coming for a tour, we have this walk around campus. But if we could start to better understand the extent of a tour that a student would or would not want, so that we can better customize that experience for them. So if we knew we had this student who really cared about seeing some of the inside details, we had a student that really wanted to know the difference between a double and a triple in a residence life. What does that look like? Because no one's shown us. Everyone talks triples and some talk quads, but no one has shown one of those yet. As a former residence life person, I know what that's like. I sure as heck don't want my son in a triple or a quad based on the several institutions I've had that had triples and quads. No one has shown it. They talk about it a little bit, And so, but if you knew what some of those interests were that you might be able to customize a little bit on that tour, that I think would better help that experience when that prospective student is leaving. I would say one other thing about the tour so far, I really thought we'd come out of this, say if we hit 12 already, that we're down to 6, maybe 5. We are not. We are down to like 9. So that, now I'm like, trying to figure out, what is kind of the next steps.
9 on the Common App. You can fit 9 on the Common App.
We can. Well, so we're early in this process. So he's just starting his junior year. So we have another year.
Oh, so there's still time too. Yeah.
And so now we're looking at, okay, which of, once we finish, we got 5 more to go. Will we be at 10 or will we be at 13? That's where we're going to start thinking about open houses. We start thinking about more extensive time to campus where you can really talk to other folks other than admissions, where you can see some of the faculty members and talk about programs or whatever else he really wants to see at that point, to see a campus when it's really lively, because we're in the summer. There are some people there, but it's not the same thing. And so what does it look like to be on a campus of 25,000 students when all 25,000 are there versus 5,000 or 6,000? Yeah. Maybe he'll get a different feel and he'll start to understand that nuance, and maybe he'll stay where he is and wants 15 to 25,000. Yeah. Maybe he'll want 5,000. Yeah. I don't know, but what does that look like? That'll be interesting to see kind of that next round. So we've actually started looking at, okay, now we know some of these schools, when are open houses in the fall? Not many have anything post spring, to know if or when we're going to make it out there so we can get them all up. And some of these, campuses, we live in Pennsylvania. Some of them up for much further in the Northeast. What is a winter like way up north? Is that something, right? Yeah. So, what's it like if it's 10 degrees outside and you're walking across campus for class? What does that feel like? Is that something you want to do every day for 5 or 3 to 4 months out of the year and for 4 years? Is that something you want? We want them to see that and experience that. So we've got to figure out how do we give that type of insight.
It's such a unique and rewarding, I'm sure, experience to go through this, because you've seen the college search process as a professional for many years, and now you're getting to see it as a parent on the personal side. How is that shifting your perspective?
So a few things with that. One is, how do the schools communicate with me as a parent? When does it actually begin? Because I'd say to this date, it hasn't started. We have one institution we visited. Yes, we've had one institution we visited that have now invited us to their parent portal. One.
Wait, that's the first thing? Wait, the first thing is to get invited to sign up for a portal?
Well, no, they've communicated. So here's what I get. I get to be a carbon copy on the emails to my son for all but maybe 2 schools. So of the schools that we've inquired to a few more than we visited. What I've kind of discovered. So yes, we were invited to a parent portal for one, but we got invited like June 1, or actually earlier in the spring, as let's get familiar with the tour process to get our feet wet. And I'm thinking they invited us because we just flipped to become a high school junior and they have content for juniors and beyond. But realistically, I've got 2 schools, I haven't gone back to tally, maybe 3 at this point, that are communicating to me as a parent, not by name, only as my son's name's parent. So if my son is John, hey, John's parent, that's how I'm being communicated to. Or it's just a carbon copy. Dear John, we would like to see you on campus for this. And so as a parent, there's a lot of room for opportunity to better communicate.
I'm shocked there's still that much room. I mean, we've been talking about how we should communicate with parents better, I feel like, for more than a decade in this field of work. Yeah, so it's a bit shocking to me that is still your experience, that there's such a gap.
So I'm not as shocked. I spend a lot of time in schools communications auditing what they have. And look, 90% of what I see is junk. Could be take the name of the school out and insert any other school in it that's similar to that one, and you wouldn't know the difference. And the level of personalization is nothing. I know we might talk about this a little bit, like in terms of what would Amazon do. It's nothing like what Amazon would do. Nothing like what a non-higher ed industry-based organization that knows what they're doing or has the amount of resources that higher ed has. And I know some schools are small and don't have a lot of resources. get that. But when you look at other organizations of that size, revenue, employees, when you look at what they do to personalize and tailor an expense or an experience, it's we're still 5 to 10 years behind in higher ed. We just are. So, there's so much opportunity to personalize. But, the key is knowing more about your prospects so that you can tailor that experience.
Yeah.
If students want a tailored experience, then you have to know what that tailored experience is for each student. If you don't know it, you can't provide it. And so that's probably the biggest struggle we have, is that we want to provide it. We just don't know what the student wants or needs to be able to provide it.
All right, well, let's talk about that then, because that's a stepping stone to having that Amazon-like experience. And we'll talk about that in a minute for sure. So what can institutions do on our side? What can we be doing to better understand and leverage data we already have or new points of data to enhance our engagement efforts?
So that goes to that concept of the messy middle. Because we know someone inquires, we know when someone applies, what they do between those two periods. We don't really know a lot. Sometimes we have data, but the data we have is pretty limited. We know that they've received 12 emails. We know that they clicked on 2 of them, or opened 4, clicked 2. We know that, but we're not necessarily doing anything beyond that to tailor the experience based on what they click or what they open. We might not include them in a list to invite them to an event because they have already registered for that event. But the number of times I've been invited to campus from schools that we've already signed up for a tour with, or my son, because he gets all the emails. We have, we get it all the time. Emails still inviting us to take a tour of campus. Come see campus. Now, I was just talking about, we're going to go back to a lot of those campuses for another tour. So it's not that you can't invite us, but how about tailoring the experience to say, now that you've seen this on campus, or to know that you came and visited in the summer when we don't have people there, come see us when there are people here. That's the different message. That's the different message. That's how we tailor the experience. So knowing that they came for a tour, knowing the time of year they came for a tour, that people weren't there, and that you might want to see it when people are there. That is a tailored experience. We don't track anything close to that. We know that you came. A lot of schools still don't use that in their communication. You could take baby steps to that. So come back to campus is the easiest thing I could say if you've already been. I haven't experienced the ones that we've inquired with right now. None of those are doing that. None. So that's what we're talking about. And so we've got here's a postcard written to us after a tour by a tour guide. All right. Nice. Like it. Very personal. This is the most detailed that anyone's given us. You're going to take a decent amount of time to have a student write this out. But this is pretty tailored to that experience, because it was a very small tour for this particular one, because that was the academic side of it. So that level of detail is really what we're trying to create in all of our electronic communications. Now, if you are a director of this or an AVP or VP of that, you're not going to know every student's experience. The CRM is your tool to understand and know what's happening. That's really the holder of all the data, of all the experiences the student is having and engaging with university. And so when you've clicked on an email, it's not just clicking on an email anymore. It's knowing what type of email, what was the topic, what was the page, what are those interests. We have to understand where they're engaging with us much more clearly. So it's not just a click. It's a click on this topic or this page. And that it's knowing that they visited our events page 4 times and they've never signed up for anything. Why not? It's knowing that answer. Why not? We got to know it. You got to know that answer. So in my world, we try to break this up. When I look at a CRM, I look at how introductory or how basic your CRM use is versus how advanced it is. And, we try to help schools move to an intermediate to more advanced operation with their CRM. So is it a 101 level, a 201 level, 301 level, 401 level? But you cannot get, I don't care how much money you put into it, you can't get to a 301 without data, because 201 really starts to where you start to branch out to providing some form of a tailored experience. 301 is a near, if not completely tailored experience. If you don't have data, you can't do it. So the real goal in 101 to 201 is thinking about what data might we want to have to create a tailored experience and start collecting the data. And then 201 is starting to deploy that in a more tailored way. Now, here's the thing. AI is changing all of this because how you build those segments or how you build that experience now is very manual. In the future, it'll be automated and done for you without that need. But AI can't build it if AI also doesn't know.
Yes. If you don't have the data.
Correct. Or if your CRM natively has the AI functionality to say, I want to send this message next. If you don't have the information in the CRM, it's not going to know. So if you're not implementing and thinking about what data we need to bring in so that in the future, meaning next week or 5 years from now, AI can do this for us, that has to be an initial step and thought process. Whether you're implementing today or you're thinking about it for the future, today's the day to start thinking about what data might we need to have. And then once we know that data, then how are we going to get it? And then either if I have AI, how will AI deploy it? Or if I don't have it, how will I deploy it? But that's really, really important for those experiences. You have to have that data. That is the most important piece for us.
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit Enrollify.org to learn more.
What do you think are some of the barriers? What prevents us from doing this well now? Is it because we don't have data analysts on the team in the CRM?
Yeah,
is it
that's
because
part of it.
It's so manual? I'm also wondering if, because sometimes we're partnering with someone else who's sending communications, right? So that data is in a different system from our CRM. What do you think are some of the big barriers here?
So that not having the data, if you're working with a company that has data and they're not giving it to you, you need to be sure that you know what they're doing and they have the right tools to really create that tailored experience. I think we turn that over because we don't have the resources or the knowledge, and we turn it over to a company to do it for us. But because we don't know what that truly tailored experience is, we don't know how to measure what they're doing to know if that is the right thing that we're trying to create. But because they've been doing it for years, we have a deeper level of trust in just letting them handle it because we don't know what it takes to make it better. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's going to be both, depending upon the institution and the scenario. But that's a biggie. So what else are we missing? I think we're going to see, I'm hopeful that we'll see more effort from a university to invest in experience level positions. So, at Amazon or at other larger companies, they're going to have experience officers, chief experience officer, or an experience group who's monitoring and measuring the experience that we're trying to create, not just in admissions, but across the life cycle. What is the experience the student should have? How do we know if they're having it or not? And that person, in technology, there are positions out there called user experience design or user experience. UX and UI are focuses of building out technology. We don't have that operationally. We don't have an operational experience person. We need that because without it, you can't have a vision. You don't have anyone who's seeing all the little pieces. We see that in a campus tour, we're doing this. In an online application, we're doing that. But there's not a central person other than typically a CRM manager, maybe director. But their job is really focused on the technology, not necessarily the experience.
Yeah.
And so it's a unique type of position. And so I'd like to see us evolve as an industry to have that, because once you have it, now you have the ability to establish this is the foundation for what we need to have. And now we have someone who's focused on measuring to ensure that we stay there.
I really love that. One of the things I say probably a lot on this podcast. So if you've heard this before, forgive me, but I really am a believer that the number one marketing and enrollment opportunity for colleges and universities is the student experience itself.
Yep.
because student experience is what drives the word of mouth. And I can't buy, ad, or run a campaign that will ever beat out the word of mouth about my institution. So we have to think about it this way.
And if you have the data that's able to measure it, a data analyst might be able to find it. But an experience-focused position or person or leader on your campus helps direct the analyst on where to go to find it, or to direct the analyst and other people on campus. We need to capture this data because we don't know what's happening here. This is some measures we can put in place to start capturing the data so that we can then assess. And once we have that, now I hopefully have that in a CRM. And now I'm thinking more student success measures in a CRM to say, okay, here's somebody who's off the experience they should be having. We've identified that. How do we get them back on track? How do I alert staff that their experience is off? And right now it's all at-risk factors. I want it to be just an experience being off, right?
Yes.
The best way to improve service with someone is to answer the question they have before they have the question. That's what we're trying to do. So who's going to encounter the question tomorrow, and how do we give them the answer today so that when the question comes, they're not there? Now we're, a world away from that, but you can't have that without data.
Yeah. So I feel like we're venturing into the Amazon-like experience strategies. And I'm going to guess that data is your first step. So you spent 2 years studying Amazon's customer experience strategies.
Yeah. I went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, you did. I can imagine it is.
This is where it started back in January of 2021, I think it was. Inside Higher Ed had this article on Ohio State bailing on this effort to implement with Workday this new student information system that was really with this intent to create this Amazon-like experience. That was what the article said. And this is nothing about Workday, nothing about Ohio State. This is just a school going down this effort and having to stop and bail on it. And the premise was they multiple years into this effort, millions and millions of dollars into this effort, and they're just saying, we're going to stop. This is not worth it. We can't do it. Why not? And I just wanted to know why not. What does it take to do it?
What happened? Yeah.
Right. And if I wanted to create an Amazon-like experience, what would that be? Well, so then I went down this rabbit hole. Well, what is an Amazon experience? I can't create an Amazon-like student experience if I don't know what the Amazon experience is and how they got to them. And realistically, I don't know. I'm multiple books into it and interviews and all this work I did to try to better understand how they got to where they are and how they view an experience, how they create an experience. And there's a different level. Realistically, it's just a different level of doing it and thinking about it than we have in this industry. Real world, what someone has asked us to do in our work when we're doing CRM work. If we're going to help a school implement CRM, these are their goals that they have. So I want to revolutionize the student experience. It's a great statement. Love it. Sounds very Amazonian. We want to do something grand and big. How do you do that? Crickets. We don't know from here to here. There's this messy middle of what we don't know. And so the best way to do it is to start from the beginning. Say, if we want to revolutionize the experience, let's define that a little bit more clearly. And if I wanted to do something like that at Amazon, I'm going to bring this to a meeting when I get on the agenda. But before I get to the meeting, I'm going to have written up a 6+ page memo about this project. And when you think about what detail has to be in there, that's the level of detail that you're putting into before you even start a project. What I get in higher ed is a sentence or a paragraph. But until you have the 6 pages, you don't know what that really means.
Yeah.
We don't have, most institutions that I've worked with don't have the people personnel to understand the next 5.5 pages. And so how do you create the next 5.5 pages? I actually wrote out a vision paper. So as a way to demonstrate to schools what it is. So I took a school that came to us saying, I want a one-stop student service center on campus. And so I wrote out in the way that Amazon would, what that vision would look like. And I maybe went a little overboard because it's more than 6 pages, but this is, what it entails. These are people involved. This is the time it's going to take. These are the departments that will be using it. These are the types of services and processes that have now been baked into this new service center. This is how the people are trained. These are the outcomes that this is going to get, which is, I should have started there. Outcomes first.
Yeah, goals first.
What is it that this is going to achieve? And so, but I would actually separate. So goals and outcomes, two different things. These are things we want to do. these are the outcomes those things are going to produce. So these goals we're going to go out and do, and the outcomes from those goals, this is what's going to do. So we're going to see response times for students raising their hand for support within 2 hours. Might be a goal. And that, but what we have to know is, because that I see goals like that a lot. I love it. But what's your starting point? We don't always know the starting point. Well, I don't know. We just wanted to be in 2 hours. Well, if I don't know the starting point, I don't know the level of change that I need to have. What if your starting point is 2 days and you want to go from 2 days to 2 hours? That is significant. That's why you need that level of preparation and documentation to start it, so that you know where you're coming from and where you're going to. The vision is giving you the end point, but you have to also know where you are today to start. And so some of my learnings from this is in our work, I wanted to work with our team to rethink, what are we doing in an implementation with someone that might be falling short or not necessarily operating the way that Amazon would? How could we improve upon this experience for ourselves, experience for our clients, so that when we are building out, these are the requirements, but there's a readiness level, right?
Yeah.
If you want to jump in and be fully AI focused, well, where are you today? If you're still operating on spreadsheets today and you want to go to AI, that's a big jump. It's not just having the tools or implementing the tools, it's knowing what it's doing for you and preparing all of the users for how their lives might be flipped. And so, that's has to be a part of the consideration. But that's part of what I learned in Amazon in terms of knowing what it is we're trying to do and all of that effort. And then I started looking at, well, let's look at this Amazon homepage. What are they doing? And how can we differentiate with what they do on a homepage versus what we might do in our own portals? And there's just a world of difference that we have. We might have some type of dynamic content.
Yeah, there might be segments, yes.
Right.
But the true level of personalization, but nobody does it like Amazon does either. Maybe Netflix, right? They set a bar, but what can we learn from it? Yeah.
Yes. And so there's a step that we can take closer to it. And this is actually where one of Ohio State's biggest complaints were. They wanted to have this area where it would courses that they want to recommend. Now, I don't even want to talk about the shared governance implications, because that's a consideration you have to have, to what extent you even go down that path. That's not necessarily where most institutions are going to want to go in a shared governance model. So let's push that aside for a moment, which, by the way, this failed implementation they had, I don't know to what extent it was technical versus philosophical and political. 95% of the problems we encounter in implementation are people-based problems, maybe 99. It's very rarely the technology.
I don't think I would. That's if I'm going to venture into trying to be Amazon, I don't think that is the project I'm picking, but.
Yes. But what we learned in that is so when I log into Amazon, and it'll be different today. That's the other thing, is the speed with which they change, but it'll be different. But it might say, hey, here's some things that are recommended for you. It used to have a section there, these are things you might be interested in for your vehicle. And it didn't say, hey, we think you own a vehicle. Here's some items for a vehicle. It said, hey, we know you own a truck. We know you own a GMC model truck. And we know that is a 3500 dually model truck. And so here's some items for that truck. What we say in higher ed is, we think you might drive to class sometimes. Here's some things that you're interested in.
Yeah.
That's the level of detail we're trying. So when you think about tailoring experience, that's the level of detail. So we want to go from transportation to vehicle to truck to brand to model to style. That level deeper. And now we have the capability to offer some type of tailored experience that the way Amazon would. That's the difference. It's a good analogy to break it down, is how deep can we go? We can go 6 more levels because we're going to level 1 and they're going to level 6 or 5 more levels. So that's what we're trying to do. That is the difference. And that's not impossible to do. Now, again, I'm not saying do that with recommended courses, but what if we did that with housing? If we could take, based upon what we know about you, this might be the best housing option for you. Yeah. The surveys that we put out, that's for first year students. But what if it's upperclassmen living on campus? What if we looked at that? Or what if we looked at careers? There are career assessments out there, but what if it's about internships? What if it's knowing when to tell someone based upon your trajectory, based upon the courses you're taking that might be more experienced or hands-on? This is a type of internship that might be of interest, or now's the time to start thinking about internships for you. because you've already started taking some academic courses in your major versus a student who's exploring. Maybe they're a semester behind. You might wait another semester before you personally invite them to start looking at that. All of these changes, and they're subtle sometimes, subtle on the back end, big on the front end in terms of a student's experience. So, all things that we kind of thought about as we were reading and doing our research on this.
And frankly, if I'm being honest, it can feel really overwhelming, right? Because that feels a lot to tackle. But I go back to the goals. So I'm gonna take your internship example. So if one of the goals at my institution is for every student to have an internship or research, whatever the right thing is for their field, right? Because internship isn't necessarily the right hands-on experience for every single major in every single field. So say that's our goal. Well, then that it becomes clear, your example, that would be something that you're going to tackle. Okay, well, how are we going to get every student an internship? Well, obviously the answer is not, let's email all sophomores and make sure they have an internship. They might already have had an internship. They might not be ready for an internship. They might not be academically ready for an internship, or they might not be socially ready. There's all different reasons, but that's how I feel like you can figure out what to tackle so that it's not, we're not trying to tackle every second of the student experience here. What you're trying to tackle is whatever is in your strategy right now. What is in the strategic plan? And then how can you think through Amazon-like experience for that piece? And you're not going to get to Amazon, but if you shoot for it, you can't get perfection, right? But you'll get to great along the way if you're shooting for it.
And I think there's a path for this on a campus. So for me, to me, this is transformational work. This is thinking about a campus transformation. And so if the strategic plan were to say one of our pillars, one of the foundations is to more deeply or more fully allow the students to tailor their own experience. It starts there, and then divisions and from their departments start to think, well, what does that mean for us in the Career Center? What does that mean for us? Well, it might mean for internships that we start thinking more strategic about how do we get students invited or informed about internships at different times based upon their readiness. How do I know they're ready? What am I doing to assess readiness to determine that they're ready? And once they're ready, what are we going to do to start tailoring that experience? What data now do I need to be able to do that? How am I going to collect it? And then what tools do I have at my disposal to use the data to deploy and build that experience? Now, the tools, by the way, that it actually comes back out of the Career Center and goes back up to a larger tool, hopefully, that you have. My natural bias is streamline the number of technologies. That's where I've been for probably the last 3 years. With the evolution of AI, we're going to start seeing a lot more point solutions into the mix again, because those point solutions can build out functionality faster than platforms can, or at least most platforms. And then the platforms start to catch up and we'll see some narrowing down. But realistically, my concern for a campus is if I've got 45 departments and 45 departments each get their own 3 tools to achieve what they need, IT cannot support that. We also can't, it slows down our progress of leveraging things out as a whole. And so, but once you get to that level of detail, okay, now I'm ready to talk deployment. Now let's bring that out to that. And then the campus has to say, okay, if this is one of our pillars of our strategic plan, how do we then prioritize that appropriately in terms of time and resources, meaning people and money in there to make this work for those departments so that they can execute.
Just to bring it back where we started and enrollment and the college search process. One, is the enrollment shop usually a good place to try to start initiatives like this? And 2, what is the first step?
Yep. So I would say it's not always the best, but I tend to start there. And this is why, because they are typically already have the technology, B, have been using the technology, and C, are typically, not always, more ready to try to experiment in some of this and have gone through these types of implementations, the technology implementation that require the process implementation or re-implementation, because you have to rebuild a lot of processes there. And so that's a great place to start. And it's also typically a little bit more of a narrowed focus for an institution. Everyone's focused on enrollment. We need to be sure that we're enrolling more new students. That's already in place versus here's all this wide student body. I've got a narrow new student body I'm trying to identify and recruit. And so a lot of that's in place. So that is an easier place to start. What was your follow-up question to that?
First step. If you're in the enrollment shop, what are you doing?
Yeah. What are the ultimate things you're trying to achieve? And so we've got a client, for example, who said, our president has said they want to increase our institutional enrollment by a factor of 5 in 3 years. All right. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but that's a huge amount of growth. Again, that gets the gap between start point and finish point. It tells you how big the gap is. The president has already given a timeline. So now I know to what extent I need to be experimenting or implementing new and different things. I'm not going to tweak things over 3 years and increase enrollment by a factor of 5.
Yeah, we're not making incremental changes. That would get us incremental growth, but yeah.
Correct. So I need to know the gap of readiness to endpoint and the timeline I have to get there. And now I can start understanding the extent to which I need to get things up and running and live, and then the extent to which I need to be reaching outside of our standard things that we do on a day-to-day or annual basis. And so I would start there. What is this ultimate? What are these outcomes and the goals? What are the outcomes? And then what are the goals? And then from there, what are the key strategies and tactics to get us to achieve those goals? So that's where I start. What is this? Let's get the vision. What's the endpoint?
Clarity.
Let's be sure we have that. Yep, that clarity. Great word, clarity.
Well, thank you so much, Mickey, for sharing your insights and experience with us. I hope all of our listeners found our discussion on enhancing enrollment strategies, managing that messy middle, and applying Amazon's experience principles to higher ed as enlightening as I did. So thank you again, Mickey.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the application on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, we'd love if you could leave us a rating and review. Your feedback helps us bring more great content to you and the rest of our community. The application is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed tech shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea, and they feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Day Kibbolds, Jeremy Tears, and so many other of your favorite higher ed leaders. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.